Welcome to another episode of Bucket List Coach Web Show, Aviation Style. Well, hello, this is Cindy Lee, aka Coach, here at Bucket List Coach Web Show. I'm going to introduce you to my guest here in just a minute. But really quickly, make sure that you go to TikTok, Facebook, and Instagram and hit that like button. And if you subscribe to Bucket List Coach Web Show on YouTube and you share this very video after subscribing and commenting, I'll gift you a 5-night hotel stay. Today is National Artichoke Hearts Day. Make sure that you go to nationaldaycalendar.com. Life is all about celebrating every single day. And a little bit about the show. I was a chef for over 20 some years, and then I got into travel, and I've always been into aviation. So this show is about my love for aviation, of course, making the most of the dash, and sharing food bucket lists, culinary bucket lists, and of course, career bucket lists. And today I have my friend Rob, and he definitely marked off the ultimate career bucket list. And Thrust We Trust, let's talk all about your story.
Well, thanks for having me on, Cindy.
Thank you. So tell your story. How did you get into the Navy?
Well, you want to know why I got in or just going in?
Why and how? Yes.
I was first exposed to the Navy through the movie The Final Countdown.
Wow.
And prior to that, I think G.I. Joe had a model of an F14 Tomcat. It was like an F14 Striker or something. They had to change the name of it. And I was 7 when that came out. And then Black Sheep Squadron was on TV in early 70s or mid 70s. I was very enthralled by that. And my grandmother used to read me books on Chester Nimitz and Douglas MacArthur. So I was already kind of stuck into the military, that the reading was fascinated me. And then Final Countdown came out in 80, and I was fascinated by the Tomcat, absolutely fascinated. And then I started studying on aircraft carriers, and I knew that I wanted to join the Navy. I knew that I would. And then it was a little lesser known movie came out in 86, and I was 15 when Top Gun came out. I went to the recruiter that very next day and was ready to sign up. And he's like, "How old are you?" I said, "I'm 15. He goes, "You're not old enough." And I said, "How old do I need to be?" He's like, 17. I said, "I'll see you in 2 years, buddy." And I was there. And I originally signed up when I was 17, and then I had to wait. I did DEP, and then I had to wait to join. So,
well, let's go right to the video. Let me just open it up really quickly. This is your favorite scene, probably a lot of people's favorite scene. So let's play here. You can see it on the screen.
Yes.
Okay, let me get rid of the comment.
Yeah, that's good, Coach.
Okay.
I was there. It's on your mind.
My options, sir.
So, first, you've acquired enough points to show up tomorrow and graduate with your Top Gun class. Or you can quit. There'd be no disgrace. That spin was hell. It would have shook me up.
So you think I should quit?
I didn't say that.
So you hear that music slowly starting in the background?
The fact is,
Yeah.
you feel responsible for Goose, and you have a confidence problem. Now, I'm not going to sit here and blow sunshine up your ass, Lieutenant. A good pilot is compelled to always evaluate what's happened so he can apply what he's learned. Up there, we got to push it.
Yeah.
That's our job. It's your option, Lieutenant. All yours.
You hear those jets in the background?
Mm-hmm.
It's so resilient.
Wow.
See, now he's thinking, maybe I do belong
Why do
here.
you want it? Sunday suit.
Definitely.
Your time.
No problem. Good luck.
Here it comes.
Yep.
Woo-hoo-hoo.
Now, I used to do this all the time when I was in the Navy. I would go to Oceana, probably go to
Anytime, baby.
outlying fields and watch the Tomcats. If you didn't get caught by the police.
Woohoo! That
Yep,
isn't
see,
she
there's
beautiful?
the hook down that you and I are talking about. All the ailerons and big stabs moving on the jet.
Well, awesome. Well, since we just showed that, let's talk all about that.
Okay.
That plane landing with the hook.
Yep.
It's supposed to land on the carrier. So what happens when it lands on the regular runway?
Well, on those they have, it's not, you just can't you can't do it on any runway. Those FCLP landing runways they have complete arresting gear on them. And then they have an outline of the carrier painted on them. And that's where they start to practice. It's called field carrier landing practice until they actually go to the boat. Once they get down those parameters in between those lines, then they're ready for the real thing. I think there's a certain high number of traps they have to take before they even qualify. And they have to do that in their first jet, which is like a T2 or T-34. And then they move to their fleet jet, whether it be a Tomcat or A6 or, whatever, F14.
Well, let me do an announcement really quick. If you're here on Facebook and you like to comment, you have to go to StreamYard.com/Facebook and accept that first. That way we could actually see who's commenting. Otherwise, it just says Facebook user. So let's talk about launching the Tomcat.
Okay.
So how does it work? And what was your position there on the USS America?
Well, there's many different positions in the catapults. You have to work up to that position, and it is the top position. It's called Topside Safety Petty Officer. And your responsibility is to hook up from the time the director gets it to the cat track. It's your responsibility to get it into the cat track, into the NGL, which stands for nose gear launch, and get it properly hooked up for the launch. One of the most exciting things about this job was you are directly under the jet as the plane goes to full power. And I've done a lot of exciting things in my life, but there's not many more exciting things than hooking up a Tomcat that's spooled up to military power, that engine 5 feet away from you, and you can feel it pulling on you.
So let's talk about the process, how it works from when you hook up that Tomcat to the cat.
Tomcat was different from every other jet because the Tomcat, as it came forward, it would drop, and it was called a kneel. And I used to call it bowing in reverence to the catapult. And then as soon as it bowed, the launch bar goes in what's called the dustpan, and it pushes forward. It goes into, and there's this little tiny track that the launch bar has to glide into. So when you're corresponding with the director, he's giving you signals, but you're giving him signals. And the pilot reacts to every single thing that I do as I'm moving the jet forward. It was a very delicate process. Tomcat was extremely heavy, between 58 to 74,000 pounds launch weight. And if you went too far, you had to push that jet back, which takes about 200 or 300 people to get it done. So it was a very intricate process as you brought the jet up. As soon as it came into the NGL, one of my guys comes in, grabs what's called a holdback bar, and you see it on the front of the video of Top Gun. You see him hooking up the holdback bar to the back of the jet, and then they'll come up 99% of the time, unless it's CQ carrier qual. They have weapons aboard, whether it be Sparrows, Phoenix, Sidewinders. Those have to be armed. It comes up on top of the jet, and they don't do that until the jet is pre-launch. And I bring it up to the top of the shuttle, move away from the shuttle, get away out behind the shot line. They arm the Sparrows, Sidewinders, pull all the RBF tags, remove before flight tags. And those are red shirts. They leave, get out of the way. Catapult officer, who's yellow shirt, directs me. I'm a green shirt. I go back to the bird. There are 2 plane checkers, we'll call final checkers for the squadron. Both of those guys are white shirts. And one is on the aft part. They're both on the aft part of the aircraft. That's me at the nose gear launch, bringing him into the NGL. You'll notice the Tomcat is bowed down. The launch bar is actually in what's called the dustpan. You see my director's arm holding up, and he's telling me pull brakes. And then as soon as I give him a thumbs up, he'll start bringing the cat forward. You'll see my fingers do this. And then I'm watching that catapult launch bar from the Tomcat glide up over the top, grab the hooks, and then go on top of the shuttle. As soon as it gets on top of the shuttle, it's what's called first ready. Nothing happens until I look back, make sure the JVDs are up and locked. The final checkers will give me a nod or a thumbs up, and I'll lock eyes with them, make sure that they see me as well. And then as soon as I tell them everything's good to go, I'll motion to the director again, bring him up, bring him forward. Pilot will spool the engines up a little bit. Now, if you have never heard the Tomcat in person, it is a primal scream that it's almost hard to, it felt like it was reverberating inside your ear, even with dual ear protection. It was so loud, but it was a guttural primal scream that you just couldn't get over. And as soon as it came to the top, I would motion, same thing to the director. As soon as a bird was armed, then he could go in. I could bring him into the actual catapult shuttle. And as soon as it drops over the top, what's called the throat, and it goes in, there's a spot on the launch bar. It's actually, I don't know if you can see it on there, but it's painted black. And as soon as that black was obscured by the front of the throat, I would look at the catapult officer, give him a thumbs up. And as soon as he saw my thumbs up, he would scan the deck. And I would go back. I'd do a double check on my JVDs, my two final checkers, check my spotter and the side deck edge operator. And there was a guy in the front of the crouch at the waist called a bow safety. And so he would give me a thumbs up for a clean shot line. And I give him a thumbs up, stroke it out, take him to tension. And at that point, catapult officer would take over, assume, but as soon as the bird spools up, all that horsepower behind me is like 5 feet away from me. I make sure the launch bar is securely locked into the shuttle. The holdback is tensioned, and you see the line properly on the side of the holdback. And then NATOPS procedure, NAVAIR, says to run down the Tomcat, past the pitot tube on the front. You see it right there. And then a 45-degree angle to get out of the vortex of the engines. And then as soon as they see my thumbs up, he waits till I get past the shot line. And then the pilot is directed directly from the catapult officer. The catapult officer takes over for launch from there. Me, not everybody did it, but I'd hold my thumbs up until the cato gave the sign to the pilot. The pilots knew because they had already powered the bird up. And they do what's called a control check, wipeout. They'll check all the stabs, spoilers, rudders. As soon as that's good to go, pilot salutes. At night, they turn the lights on, the nav lights on, and the formation lights, which it's just wicked. And then as soon as that happens, they put him at Zone 5 Afterburner, which lights up the whole entire back of the ship, and it licks around the JBD. It was just something. I mean, you can't really describe what it's like to see that. And the heat is burning from the back of that jet. And as soon as that's good to go, you'll see the catapult officer give him Zone 5. He usually like throws his hand up in the air, and then he'll point down to the deck. And just because he points down the deck doesn't mean launch. And you'll see the deck edge operator with both his hands up, showing he doesn't have hands on the cap. So he drops down and points forward. Then I will do the same thing. I'll look, make sure, give him a thumbs up, and then he'll give the signal to launch. And then the Tomcat would crouch down like there was so much weight pushing down on top of that catapult. It would crouch down and then take off. 0 to 150 in less than 2 seconds. 0 to 150 to 180, back to 0 in less than 2 seconds.
Wow.
And the aircraft would be airborne. Me, I would hold my salute until the jet went off the round off. And then next bird's up, ready to get launched.
That is amazing. I'm actually trying to get on a carrier in the middle of writing a letter so I could have a guest appearance there so I could learn all about it. I think it's 3 or 4 days.
Keep that up. Yeah, keep driving towards that
amazing,
life-changing experience.
Tell me why I need to mark that off my bucket list.
Oh, God. I've done a lot of cool things in my life and a lot of exciting things, but, being on that, in that atmosphere, and it's like a symphony. Every single one of those colors on the flight deck work in coordination with each other. And it is like one big it's chaos. It's organized chaos, but all of it coming together to make a beautiful product, which is a successful launch. And I mean, and these guys, well, I don't know about everybody else, but we work 24-hour days, sometimes 2 or 3 days straight. All those guys are tired. All those guys, it's hot, it's cold, there's so many different, variables going into this job, but at the same time, the intensity and how scary it was is the juice that kept you going. And it was just an amazing thing to experience, especially seeing that first scene of Top Gun. That's what got me locked
That's
into
the best scene.
that.
Yes.
And then one day I'm doing it every day, and you start to lose
Wow.
track. You're like, I'm living my dream job. This is what I wanted to do, And yeah, it was awesome, really good.
I don't know if I told you that I was in the Navy, but civil service. I worked in a shipyard on a submarine, and that's kind of my love for the Navy. And then I have a love for the Air Force as well. I used to live near Travis Air Force Base. I'd see the big C-5s
Yes,
flying over.
we have
And
Bs fly here out of Ellsworth all the time, and I can hear those afterburners coming. I don't even have to look up. I'm like, that's an afterburner aircraft. And my girlfriend's like, how do you know that? I said, it's just a different sound. You can tell. Love them.
But you know what disappointed me about the Super Bowl? Can you guess?
Flyby?
The flyby was like 3 seconds.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was hardly any time at all. I'm like, what?
What kind
And
of
usually there's at least a little bit more time there. But yeah,
Right.
that's the best part about the Super Bowl.
Yeah, there's several. If you look on YouTube, there's several F14 flybys for Super Bowls, and it's just a different. It's just a different jet. It really is. Different people. The Tomcat community in and of itself it's just different. I can't really put my thumb on it. What was different, but it just was. The guys were different. The aircraft were different.
So let's talk about the pilots and the radar intercept officer. Not everybody knows what their positions are. Can you kind of go over what they do or what
Well,
they
it's
did for
pretty
the
simple.
F-14?
The pilot flies the jet. He's in charge of all. He's in charge of all anything flight related. He's got a hold of the stick. He tells the bird where to go. The REO is basically a weapons officer. He's in charge of making sure that, and the Tomcat weapon system was very complicated, but it was very effective. And pilot had enough going on. He can obviously shoot a missile too, but REO was in charge of tracking, targeting. The Tomcat was different because like Phoenix, they could track 24 different targets at one time and shoot 6 different missiles. Usually those were not carried all the time because that's a lot of weight slung on that bird. But they would usually carry 4, back in the days of the Cold War, and then 2 Sparrows and 2 Phoenix. But the REO was in charge of not only that bird, but then if you had a section of Tomcats, which is 2 jets, and you have 4, which is a division. But if they were running a division of airplanes, one guy in one of those jets, which was the REO, was in charge of that mission planning and coordinating with the E2 Hawkeye, which is also basically an airborne air traffic control, and basically command the battle space. But the REO in one of the Tomcats was in charge of that whole entire operation.
So let's talk about shout outs. Let's shout out to David Bronick.
Bile is the first guy that I noticed on the reel at the end of the movie. And I wasn't too concerned about the movie stars. I wanted to know the real men, that made that possible. And yeah, for my birthday last year, my girlfriend got all 3 of those books, all signed from Bio. And,
I love it.
Now, back in the day, we didn't have DVD, we had VHS. And I wore that Top Gun video out, spooling back that VHS and writing down those names, Bio, Jaws, Flex. And I met several of those guys throughout my career.
Oh my God, how amazing.
Oh yeah, it was. And I haven't met Bio yet, but I'm going, we've talked several times, but I'll meet him in May. But I was enthralled with those guys and the whole picture of how everything, went together and came together. I don't know if you know it, but that movie created a 500% increase in Navy recruiting.
Yes, it did.
Unreal. And I was one of those, But I was already locked into the Navy. I was already going for sure. It was just that sealed the deal. That put me in that recruiter's chair. I saw Top Gun on a Saturday. I saved up lawn mowing money for 3 weeks to go see that movie. And then
No way.
I was in the recruiting station that following Monday.
Let's talk about the Leakster.
Leakster. Him and I were both aboard the USS America. We, at the time, there was a different, it's more of yep, there's my signed picture. The interaction between officers and enlisted people were a little bit different. And I was even told by guys in my work center that these guys do not care about you. They don't know who you are. They probably think you're an idiot running around on the flight deck doing what you do. And I kind of believe that. But at the same time, I knew the difference between officers and enlisted. And there is a line, there is a professionalism there that has to be maintained. And it always was. But we had a day off, and we were on the cruise. We're on Med Cruise 93. And I was down in the gym. We had the day off for some reason. I went to the gym. And there was a guy in there with a VF-102 shirt on. I could tell just by the way he carried himself, he was an officer. And he didn't have it. They didn't wear their patches around, but I could tell that he was an officer. And with the VF-102 shirt, I thought there's a pretty good chance he was a pilot. And I was very intimidated by this. And I was like, God, I want to say something, but I don't want to look like an idiot. I sure don't want to be disrespectful. And he's probably like, what is this weirdo looking at me? Because I kept, I kept watching him. Finally, I said, sir, are you not? He said, are you an officer? He's like, yeah. And I said, and I stuttered. I was like, are you a Tomcat pilot? And he goes, yeah, I fly a Tomcat. I was like, oh my God. And my head started getting light, and I started getting a little woozy. And I said, do you fly for VF-102? And he goes, yeah. And he's wearing, it's a dumb question. He's wearing a VF-102 shirt. And I said, is there any chance that you could possibly maybe, if you don't mind, if you have time, take a camera up for me and take some pictures? And he said, yeah, absolutely. I'll do that. And I just kind of sat there dumbfounded. I was like, holy crap. He said, yes. And he goes, you have it on you? I said, no, it's in my work center. I said, but I'll go up and get it. And he goes, just bring it up to the ready room and give it to me. And at this point, God is here, right? On aircraft carrier, Tomcat pilots are here and aircrew, period. And so here I go down the passageway, and as you step into the ready room, it turns from blue tile on the ship to red diamondback tile. And there's this huge diamondback snake on this tile. Sacred ground. And I step into there, and I'm surrounded by all fighter pilots. Here I am, enlisted, nobody. And I'm so nervous. And then there was a legendary XO at the time. His name was Lieutenant Commander Barbary, or Lieutenant Commander. His call sign was Pirate, but his last name was Barbary. So Barbary Pirate. And he's like, what do you do on the ship, man? And I said, I work in the catapults. And he's like, oh, you guys do a great job launching us. And I actually started like I was getting sick, like I was going to pass out. Was the way he was talking to me. And Leakster came around the corner, took my camera from me, put it in his flight bag. And then he went up on this hop, and I got to launch him, which was really cool. He went up on this hop. He took pictures of in-flight refueling, took pictures of additional, you see Leakster up in the corner there. He took pictures of just him and his reel hanging out. And it was the coolest thing. And he came back, and I don't know if it was that day or if it was the following day, but he brought me my camera back, and he took one of his VF-102 patches off and gave it to me. And I still have that patch.
No way.
Yeah. And then, so now think about the air wing and the air and the ship are two different, these are two different, entities. They're together on cruise, but as soon as we get home, the aircraft carrier goes to Norfolk and all the squadrons go to Oceana. So I didn't see Leakster at all, but he literally changed my life and the trajectory of what I was doing in the Navy at that time, because I was getting kind of a little unenchanted because I was just an idiot and about what I did. I was so engaged and driven into what I was doing. And nobody else seemed to really share that with me. And I never got tired of launches. I never got tired of 24-hour maintenance, keeping that cat going. I never got tired of horrible food. I just, the whole experience was just very enchanting to me, and it still is. And so 28 years goes by, and I was doing some stuff with the VA, and they're like, well, we need you to write down everything traumatic that happened to you in the Navy. I was like, well, that's a long story. Started writing this stuff down. Now, when I was active duty, when I was on cruise, I wrote everything down. I chronicled and journaled everything every day. And of course that was in there. And then I was like, oh, man, I wonder what Leakster is doing. And then I made this write-up, and there's a Rio that I know real well, Dave Parsons. And he said, you need to put that on the Tomcat Association page. Mm-hmm. And I did. And 30 guys that were either flew with Leakster, was in a squadron, or knew him from American, contacted me and said, hey, we know Leakster, and we're going to get you in touch with him. And I know, you know Taco Bell. He called me and he goes, Rob, I know Leakster. He got me flying at American. He said, he's going to call you tomorrow. And I said, yeah, that's not going to happen. Sure enough, Leakster called me that following morning, and he said, hey, I got a podcast. I'm going to put you on. And it's just been a whirlwind since then, knowing that, I was able to, he made such a huge impact on me. And come to find out, I wasn't the only one. He did that for a lot of guys. And, and I didn't really, not necessarily in the Tomcat community, but, you kind of kept your distance because of the enlisted, you were supposed to talk to officers unless they were in your chain of command. And even then, it was at a very, low level. Yes sir, no sir. Answer direct questions. But Leakster was so cool and
very humble. Yes,
very humble, and it made a big impact on me. It made a big impact on my career, and now I'm a Sea Cadet instructor, and I get to do that same thing. People that want to do what I got to do. Same thing, and I use him as an example. He'll never take credit for that, and that's part of his draw. That he won't take credit for that. But he changed my life. He changed a lot of guys' lives. And
I'm not even in the military, and he changed my life. Yeah, in so many ways. Just the first interview was just so epic, and hearing all the stories. Yeah. So we're at 28 minutes. I go a little longer with my aviation friends because this is awesome. Like my hugest passion. So do you have any cat stories?
Any catapult stories?
Mm-hmm.
As far as what?
Kind of sketchy, scary.
Oh
my God. What just happened? Yeah.
Several. One of the first times I was selected, there's several stations that you operate up to before you become a topside PO. If I remember, it was either 9 or 10 prior to you being able to be on charge on the flight deck. You have to earn that spot. And I didn't know this until recently. I talked to one of my chiefs that I was on board my ship with, and I said, how come you let me do that as an E3? And he said, you were so driven and you had such a attitude about what you were doing. He said, you put so much into it. He said, I thought that you deserved that chance. And I did. When the first time I saw it, I'm like, that's where I want to be. That's what I want to do. But there were several different workstations prior to that. One of the first ones was wakeboard. And all it is, it's a really simple piece of equipment. You just scroll numbers, go up, show the Rio, the weight. He either gives you a thumbs up or he'll do this or down. And that was exciting me because I got to interact with the pilots, even nonverbal. It was still, I was interacting with those guys. And I had worked my way up to the point, probably my second time I launched, and I was up there on my own. Finally, I didn't have my training PO with me. I went and got a little excited. I went and showed the Tomcat, which was on Catapult 3, showed him his weight, gave me a thumbs up with flashlight, and turned around. And then I forgot that there was an EA6B that was coming to Cat 4, and I needed to get his weight too. So I thought, okay, well, I'm going to beat him to the punch. I'm going to get back by the troubleshooters. And that's no man's land back there. You're not supposed to be back there. And they didn't say anything. They like pushed me back, which is even worse. And so I'm like, oh, I need to give the Cat 4 his weight. So I gave the NFO and the Prowler his weight, and the weight wasn't right, and I had to switch. Well, the whole time this is happening, Cat 3's Tomcat is going into first ready, and as soon as you're first ready, they're getting ready to arm the bird. And I swung around, I looked at that Tomcat, and I was like, yeah, I got time to get this finished. And I showed that weight. By the time I did that, he was already into the throat of the shuttle, and I wasn't out of place. I was in the wrong spot. And I thought, good, I can't get over there quick enough. So I just and same thing, I stood back behind. I was in no man's land. Now, an EA6B had vectored thrust that went down and kind of out. And a Tomcat, of course, was straight out. And that Tomcat went into burner. And Cindy, it felt like my head was melting off of my cranial was melting off of my head.
Oh my God.
Way too close. And I couldn't do anything. And then on Cat 3, they'll bring that aircraft to burner, and then Cat 4 will power up and become in tension. So I've got a Tomcat in full Zone 5 afterburner, which is just frying me to a crisp. And I'm stuck between this and an EA6B Prowler, which has got that horrendous exhaust that points down. So I'm holding on for dear life. That Cat 4 jet goes into tension, and I'm literally up. It's blowing me up in the air. I'm holding on to the pad eye, and it's blowing my legs up in the air. And then they see what's going on, and they suspend the launch. Well, that makes it worse because I have to sit there and get roasted until they power that bird down. And it doesn't happen immediately. They have to power the bird down. They have to get the launch bar out of the shuttle, and then the bird powers down. This is not a quick process. And then Cat 4 had to suspend too because Cat 4 can't shoot past Cat 3, especially a Tomcat and a Prowler. So I sat there. I got roasted. My goggles were literally melted down the side of my cranial. And then this whole side of my cranial was melted. My shirt was melted to my skin. And the Catapult officer came back there to see if I was okay, and I was smiling. I mean, that EA6B had thrown rocks at me and chipped a tooth, and it just beat the hell out of me. But it was so exciting. And then I got in trouble, because I was in the wrong spot. But that was my second time at wakeboard, and it was scary, but it was thrilling at the same time. And I never made that mistake again, ever. I mean, I was a lot quicker. I had to be quicker. When a bird's coming up, you don't ever want the bird to stop. You want to keep that. You want to keep that continual motion, and not interrupt the launch sequence.
Look who's on. Paul Ward. He's coming on next.
Oh yeah, can't wait. Paul and I got a lot of good stories to talk about.
Definitely. So let's go about another 5 minutes. Let's just kind of do a recap of what we talked about. What was your position again on the USS America?
Topside safety petty officer.
And what was your job there on the USS America?
I just worked in the waste cats. I was an aviation boatswain's mate, launching recovery equipment. And actually, that wasn't the top position. You had a deck edge position too, which I moved to later. And then there's a downstairs operation for console. That was fun too, but it wasn't on deck, so it wasn't nearly as exciting. The drive was fear, fear for your life, and taking care of those jets. It's better to die than it was to look bad, everything had to be like as a big symphony. And I love being a part of that operation and, making each one better than the one before. And very exciting time.
So when the Tomcat is landing on the carrier, you really don't know that she's coming in. She's just like, boom, she's just on the carrier. So
Oh,
what does that feel like when she lands?
That sound is unmistakable. And Tomcats would do, they'll come by in section like this over the tower, and then they're both wings swept 68. One will break, and there's nothing like watching a Tomcat in the break, and then spread their wings, dirty up, drop their gear. But you can hear that sound; it is unmistakable.
And yeah, that's when you know that it's landing, is when it's
God, yeah,
approach.
Yeah, and then at night they do straight in approaches. But during the day, they come in the break, and when they do the break, I mean, everything is just crystal clear precision. Boom, you can literally set your watch to it. And the things that they do, and not just as it's all aviators. I mean, they all have to practice that spot on formation, break flying. I would sometimes hide in the catwalk so they couldn't see me, and I would take my cranial off so I could. So they couldn't see, especially at night, it would glow. So I would take my cranial off and put my hearing protection in. It was still incredibly loud, but I'd hide in that catwalk and watch them jets land. And
wow.
It's just the most exciting thing.
The sound of jet fuel, baby. Anytime, baby. Yep. So in closing, what would you recommend to a young woman or guy who wants to come into the Navy? What do they need to prepare to work for the carrier?
Work ethic, number one. And that seems to be losing its track for sure. When I got out of the Navy, I told I was working for somebody, and he said, well, you have a number of hours you want to work today. I said, well, half days. And he goes, what do you mean? I said, 12 hours a day. He goes, oh, you work 24 hours a day in the military. I said, nonstop, it is a schedule that makes everything else pale in comparison. I mean, you want work ethic, you want pride in what you do. There's going to be a lot of things that you learn that you never imagined that you would learn. You're going to learn with every type of person, personality, culture, race, and you have to be able to do that in a dynamic environment. And on cruise, tempers get short, people get tired, people miss home. There are so many sacrifices that go into that, but at the same time, you're making lifelong friends that you will never, ever, and if you don't talk to them for 20 years, you get them on the phone, you'll talk for 2 hours like you just talked last week. And that's how it was with me.
Wow.
And I would just say, be ready for, have an open mind. There's going to be some really crappy things that you have to do in the military, but guess what? That's part of it. And, but do the best job that you can. I don't care if you're a garbage man, you go out and be the best garbage man you can possibly be. And I always had that attitude when I was active duty. And I followed that into, everything I've done since. But the flight deck taught me all of that. And attention to detail is probably the biggest thing that I learned. But work ethic pretty much is emphatic of all that. If you have that, then everything else will fall into place. And the launch and good attitude, it gets crappy out on cruise. You're cold or you're hot. And the Persian Gulf is 130 degrees, 150 with jets turning. Miserable conditions. But it is what you make it. You can make it bad or you can have fun with it. And that's what I did. And, that's the most important thing. Work ethic and willing to sacrifice of yourself for the better of your team.
That is so, I'm just mesmerized by as many people that I've been able to get on my podcast in aviation. I mean, it's a huge passion since I was 16. Mm-hmm. And let's do a shout out to Hey Joe, David Parsons.
Absolutely. Yeah. Hey Joe's a great guy. He's helping me get a Tomcat restored in Kansas. It's a big project. It really is, but it's a worthwhile project. I don't care how big it is. It means something to me because that jet is part of military history, aviation history, American history. And I don't care what it takes. I'll be out there scrubbing on that thing by myself if I have to. But that jet will be restored. And David Parsons has been a huge part of that. He's a legend in the community as well. And all those guys are just aces all the time.
Anything else you'd like to shout out to, or anyone else, or any kind of tips before I put you in the green room?
Well, we covered Leakster, and yeah, there's so many. I could name hundreds. It seems like Leakster put us on with a couple of his pilots too. Smokehouse Casey, he was in VF 102. Jeff Grapp, same thing. One of my podcast hosts is Eric Mullen. His call sign Siphon.
Mm-hmm.
Another producer for the F14 Tomcat radio show, Lorenzo.
Love Lorenzo.
Those guys have really it's been a whirlwind since Leakster called me that day. He's like, hey, I want to put you on a podcast. I've never been on a podcast before. But, being on with him was surreal. It was like I was in a fantasy dream world or something.
Yeah. Thanks to Lorenzo. He started this whole thing for my podcast. He's the one who got me Leakster, and then I met Taco, and it just keeps on going. Yeah. So
anybody that Leakster seems to have had some sort of interaction with is played a big part in all this. And Taco was the one that called me and said, hey, I know Leakster. He wants to hear this. He needs to hear this story.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah.
For sure.
All great guys.
Well, thank you so much. I am so grateful. I can't tell you enough.
I can't wait to meet Biles.
How grateful I am for you and for Leakster and Taco and so many aviators,
right,
that have like totally changed my life, because this is part of my bucket list. I'm never going to be a pilot or work in the Navy because I'm almost 60 years old, but it's my true dream just to hear stories. I mean, stories are so powerful.
Well, you're still keeping that history alive, doing this. You are serving.
Thank you.
Keep the people that, and not only just the pilots and the Rios, but the maintainers, the people who run museums like Paul, that is keeping that spirit alive. And that's important. It's important that we know American history and, what some of these guys did to keep us free and keep us safe. And it's just an amazing thing.
Well, I'm at 42 minutes. I'm going to put you in the green room. I got to get with Paul here shortly. Thank you so much. And I definitely want to have you on about once a month or every couple of months to tell more amazing aviation stories.
There's plenty.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thanks, Cindy.
Thank you.
Thanks for having me.
Oh, my Lord. Make sure that you go to YouTube over at Bucket List Coach Web Show Live. Subscribe, comment, and share this video. I'm actually going to be doing some snippet videos as well. But tune on to Bucket List Coach Web Show Live. You can follow me on TikTok, Instagram, and definitely go to my group at Friends of Bucket List Coach Web Show Live on Facebook. Next on the show, I have my friend Paul, known as Chappie, and we're talking about the upcoming event that's happening in April, the Top Gun movie night. So stay tuned here at 3 o'clock Pacific.